All right, we're going.
Great. So welcome to today's webinar on increasing student engagement in your FYE class or course. Thank you for coming today. And today's webinar will be recorded and it will be sent out by email tomorrow. If you have questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat window during the session and we'll address them as we're able to. We have allotted some space at the end for a question and answer period as well, if you wanted to hold your question until then. Today's webinar is brought to you by Human eSources. Human eSources is a worldwide leader in the development and provision of online personal assessment, student success, and education and career development programs. We've also launched a free resume service, and you can learn more at humanesources.com. Today, we're very fortunate to have our own Nick Rabinovitch here to talk to you about course-based engagement for greater student persistence and a reduced workload for you. Nick oversees the educational content of our products and the resources that support those products. He works closely with educational research consultants and performs his own research to continuously improve our current suite of products. Nick has worked in the online education and career development field for about 20 years. Prior to that, he spent 7 years as a high school teacher, covering several subject areas, including biology, physics, math, and psychology. Nick has a Bachelor of Science degree in Biological Sciences and Psychology and a Bachelor of Education in Secondary Education. And I know he's also been dipping his toe in the data science waters as well. I'd like to welcome Nick to today's call. And with that, over to you, Nick.
All right. Thank you very much, Tamara. That's a very nice intro. Always weird to hear people talking about your history. My whole involvement throughout my career and even through my education was all about learning. I've always had a fascination with learning and how information can be transferred between individuals and hopefully make the world a better place eventually. I mean, that's the ultimate goal of transferring information, right? Getting better through successive generations. And I know that transfer of information can occur much more when you're engaged. That's the whole point of this webinar and this presentation today is how can we get that engagement from our students? Because if they're not engaged, there's no information transfer going on. And obviously that's not what we want. We do want information transfer. I'll move on to the first slide and I'm going to try this icebreaker. And hopefully people know how to use the chat because that's critical to this icebreaker. And it's just a question I want people to respond to in the chat. This says, what is your name? If you want, you can just do a first name or even just initials if you're more comfortable that way. And then one interesting or unusual fact about your organization or institution located at. And while you're thinking that, I'll start with myself. Obviously, you heard my name already, Nick Rabinovitch. But some interesting fact about Human eSources is that we've been a virtual company since 1997. So way before COVID, we decided we all would work best from home. Have distributed across many countries, in fact, as an organization, but we all work from our homes. And so I guess we really started the trend. Anyone else want to put in an interesting fact about their institutional organization in the chat or say it out loud? Wow, we have was that millennial? 27? I'm not too familiar with the generations. That's great. Love seeing younger people come into the education field. Oh, the university is 27 years old. Sorry. Sorry, I just read that so quickly. I misread that. I apologize. That seems fairly young for a university. So the millennial university, I guess. I used to live in Florida, by the way. I'm in the opposite side of the continent now, but I did live in Florida for a time. Okay, so Maggie's the only one to share for now, but hopefully we can get other people involved at some point later in webinar. But I'll keep going. And the point of doing that is icebreakers are a really good way to get started with courses, classes, students in multiple ways. So if you have opportunity, if you're in a position where you directly interact with students, or if you oversee a department and the different instructors, I would encourage you to get them to do the icebreakers. It's a great way to start. And I'll give you a perfect example of why that has an impact. And it goes way back to when I was a teenager and I had a dentist who I would see once in a while, but, you know, like once every 6 months or so when you see for cleaning. So, you know, the last thing I expect was the dentist to remember who I was or anything that I did. But they very smartly on the first appointment wrote down a few notes, personal notes about me, the fact that I was a swimmer at the time. And on one of the subsequent appointments, brought it up just in casual conversation. Oh, how's your latest swim meet? And I was just astounded that this dentist who saw me once every 6 months knew something about me. And of course, I still remember that to this day, more than 40 years later. And so it had an impact. And every time I went to the dentist, I felt a little more comfortable, because it's often a place where you're not comfortable. And I even asked them about it, and they revealed that that's a technique that they use to get people to relax in the chair, because not everybody's comfortable in the dentist chair. So it is a great technique to use with students. I know not every student is comfortable, whether it's online or in person. So it can be a great technique to get people to feel comfortable in those environments. All right, so what are we going to cover in this webinar? I'll keep moving forward. Hopefully the chat gets figured out. What does learner engagement look like? And we just had a taste of it there with an icebreaker is one form of it, but we're going to take a few other views of it. And how can you measure or track it? How can you optimize it? Notice I use the word optimize instead of maximize. I know instructors and educators are burdened with a lot of things to do, and adding on more onto their plate is not necessarily the best strategy. So we're going to say, you know, what's the minimum you can do and still have an impact without going overboard. So that's why I use the word optimize there. And then what tools are available to help with that engagement? Any question about the objectives today or the agenda? Okay, I'm going to throw up a poll right now, and it is about your role at the university. Hopefully this is one way we can get people to interact a little bit. So you should see it appear on your screen now, and I will show the results in real time as people answer it. So Maggie, you're a star pupil today so far of interaction and engagement. Okay, now we got more people. So other, okay. If whoever answered other, if they feel comfortable, if you can just in the chat maybe describe what your role is, or of course say it out loud if you want to take yourself off mute.
We have student support services.
Okay.
Keeping things going.
Good. Okay. Yeah, for sure. All right. I'm just going to move forward with that poll. I know we have more people here, but maybe people are just having technical issues with the engagement pieces. But I wanted to get an understanding of what your role. So we have administrator, and as an administrator, I'm going to assume you don't have a lot of direct interaction with students. But student support, you probably have a little more interaction, and I'll try to cater the remaining part of the webinar to that knowledge, to your role. So of course, that's a technique that you can use in the classroom, knowing what people's goals are at the outset and trying to cater a little bit as you can. I know you typically have a course figured out ahead of time, but if you can cater a few moments in time to particular needs of students, that increases engagement as well. So understanding people's, we're doing a role here, but in the case of students, understanding people's objectives, which would be synonymous with their role as an employee. All right, so what does learner engagement look like? That's going to be this first section. So learner engagement it can be one of many things. And first, before we know learner engagement looks like, we need to know what the learners look like. And this is what modern day students look like in colleges, and the comparison between online and not online students in colleges. And you can see this looks fairly different from what we may remember from our own days as students. Mostly non-traditional age in this case with online 65, but even in non-online, there's still over a third non-traditional age, and twice as likely to be married. So that's very different from early years where you didn't have that. We also have a greater proportion of females, which is a good thing, obviously. And we also have a lot of part-time students, especially in the online world. And a lot of people are working concurrently, and this is 30 plus hours a week, not just part-time, but practically full-time, 30 hours per week. So half of the online students are, and still a quarter of the in-person students are. So people are, bottom line, there's a lot of things going on in their lives. So if we understand that about learners, we understand that trying to get engagement from them, as it seems to be happening in this webinar, is more difficult. So you got to use different types of tips and tricks to get that to happen. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like this, which we could call our traditional type classroom. Here we got everyone looks super interested and engaged, and it's probably more like this when it comes to the learners we have today. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about engagement and trying to engage with students, that there's a lot of competition for attention. So what percentage of community college students learn online? As of fall 2021, which is now almost outdated, the number, guess how many people took at least one online course? I want someone in the audience to guess. You can do it in the chat, or again, say it out loud. Anyone have a guess about what percentage of community college students as of fall 2021 took at least one online course? No guesses. I might be missing some of the chats, Tamara, if you... Okay, we do have some guesses. 45, 87. Well, we're going to hit it right down the middle. It's about 65%. So fairly significant number. How many people, what percent took all online, you figure? And it's 40%. So that is quite a bit. We're talking almost half of students took all online courses in community college. I know, even in non-community colleges, my daughter's going to university next year, and she basically has to take 2 of her 5 courses from a full course load online, and she had to take them online because she couldn't find a time slot for the in-person. So not only are students choosing to, but in some cases they're even being forced to take courses online. So as an administrators, you might be aware of this, and this will obviously vary from institution to institution, but it's happening both in community colleges and universities, and even in K-12 now, we're starting to see students take online. My son, who's still in high school, is taking several online courses because he's part of a sports academy, but it is happening with students who are not in those academies. So it's happening quite a bit. So now that we know about what learners look like, and we know that there's a lot of distractions going on, and we know that there's a lot of blending of online versus in-person courses that they're taking, now we can look at, well, what does engagement look like for those students? And this slide is meant to show you kind of like a sort of a Maslow's hierarchy, or at least a hierarchy, it's not necessarily Maslow's, of what does engagement look like from very basic at the top, where you have they just show up, all the way down to very deep level engagement of the output that you get from the student goes beyond the program scope. So that's an example of a student taking all the course content or some of the course content that you've been offering the students, and they are able to go to the next level with that and say, hey, you know what, because I've learned this, here's something else that I can know now, or that I can do now. And that's what relevant output goes beyond program scope means. So getting an eye of this, and obviously when students at the first day of class, they show up, just showing up is where everybody's going to be. And the role of the instructor and the administrators, all the staff at the school, is to try to get them to move down into those deeper levels of engagement. And knowing what those levels are, and these are just approximations, you could probably add, you know, things in between here or tweak these. is your goal to move them gradually through there. And some students may never get to that full deep level, and sometimes we have to accept that. But the goal is obviously to move them in that direction. Anybody have any questions about this, or any suggestions for other things that might look like engagement that I haven't described on this slide? One example that I can think off the top of my head, for example, is learners have indicated they are comfortable accessing the information. That's a big, we talked about all the online students now. Sometimes it takes a while just for the students to figure out, how do I log in? Where do I go? Where do I navigate to get my information? Or, where do I go on campus to get, the right services that I need? So just being comfortable with that access for information, or for any kind of tools that they need to use, is a level of engagement. Knowing that they got the textbook that's required for the course, or maybe a PDF, whatever it is. So that could be another level of engagement that you got to look for. And of course, that would be nearer to the top, because if they're not engaging with the content, they haven't gone very far, but at the least a little bit further down than showing up. So look for those things. And if you want to make a map yourself as an instructor or as an administrator to provide to instructors of what does learning engagement look like, and sort of measure your success as a college or university, to say, how deep am I getting my students engaged? This is a great way to do it. Create your map of what's the base level down to the deepest level, and start to map out how far students have gone, and measure that engagement.
It's a great point that sometimes that can kind of be a non-starter even for students. I know back when it was, pencil and paper practically for distance education, that was my first experience going back to college. And I didn't even know how to reach out, who to reach out to at the time. So it stopped me. I didn't go any further with that coursework. So sometimes it's that really important piece of onboarding as well.
Yeah. Another thing not to be afraid of is sometimes it could be, and I have done this in my experience as an instructor, is show this map to the students. There's no reason to hide this from them and say, here's the level of engagement that I'm looking to get out of you as maximal as possible. And if you're not getting past, level 2 or 3, let me know, or at least, provide some kind of indication that I haven't gotten to this level, and I can do what I can to help you. Or if you have a teaching assistant, I know everybody would love to have one of those and not necessarily available, but someone else involved with the course who can help with that type of thing, then, let them know that this is your goal, and then they can flag that, something's not working for me here, and you can become aware of it. Because if, as an instructor or as an administrator, you're not aware of these things, obviously you can't respond to them. Okay, I'll move forward. So how do you measure? So now we know what learners look like and what learner engagement look like. And of course, it's going to be slightly different for every different institution. But how can you measure that? And we talked about one way where you give the map to the students and they're indicating, what their level of engagement is at various points in the course, or maybe you have some kind of poll that's in your learning management system. There are other ways to track that as well. And you can start really basic. So are people arriving on time to webinars? We had 4 people in our waiting room to this webinar today, so I was actually really happy about that when I saw that. I'm hoping for some more engagement throughout, but so my engagement right now with this webinar is below where I would like to be. I'll be upfront about that. And so that's what I'm trying to do, things to improve as we go through this. But look, our students being on time to class, if it's in person, or to if it's online, is there a sufficient quantity of output from the student? That's what I'm talking about, learner output in this case, where they would be handing in assignments, completing readings, anything that you can measure in terms of their output. Are they completing the assignments in enough and on time? And is it good quality? That would be kind of a deeper level of it. So what is the quality of their output like? So those are things that you would do as part of a course, regardless of whether you wanted to track engagement or not. it's one way to do it. I mean, you got to take assignments in and grade them if you're going to, run a course typically, assuming it's for credit, or if they need to, if it's a pass-fail type system, they're still probably handing in some work. And that's a way to measure engagement. That doesn't add anything to your plate necessarily, because you're already carrying out that as part of the course progression. And if possible, design the course in a way where rather than have big, large bits of output that you collect very few times throughout the course, let's say, okay, we get, your major assignment, you're going to hand it in all at the midterm time. Instead of doing that, it's better to break it out into much smaller pieces and get it early. So within the first week, have something real basic for the students to have as output, some kind of assignment to hand in. And that's an early measure, because the earlier you can measure that engagement, obviously, the better. So rather than big, large pieces that you would collect fewer times over the course, it's much better to break it up into smaller pieces over the breadth of the course, the length of the course, so you can measure it early and measure it often. So this next shot shows what a learning management system called Canvas. Some of you may be aware of it. I know most colleges, universities have some kind of learning management system. You may have Blackboard, you may have Moodle, D2L, Brightspace, I think it's called now, is available in most. And this is actually a really good way to measure output from a student. Output is, of course, as I mentioned before, assignments handed in or completed. And so it's a way to measure engagement. So this one shows that very early on the introduction, this is an FYE course 101, there's something worth 5 points, really basic out of, let's say it's a total of 1,000 points for the course, for example. So it's a very small piece, but it can capture engagement early on in your course. Quick discussion on their goal for the course. So that functions doubly as an output that you can see whether students are handing in on time, but it's also a way to personalize things. What are my students' goals? We talked about that earlier with the icebreaker, so you can do some catering and understand them, and maybe even have discussions with them if possible, where you're recognizing their individuality. And the rest of these would go, throughout the course, but you can see the dates on here: November 3rd, November 6th, November 10th, November 17th. They're all fairly close together, and, it's often throughout the course. So great way to keep engagement rather than, okay, everything on the midterm, in November type thing, which would make it difficult. I know I talk fast and sometimes move fast, but I want to pause for a second here. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or feedback they would like to offer through the chat or verbally? So am I delivering the content that you expected based on the way this webinar was advertised? Are you looking for something slightly different?
And there will also be a survey at the end too. Please fill out.
Yeah. Saying the other nice part about having this broken up into smaller pieces, it can provide a sense of accomplishment for a student. If they're finishing something quickly and getting it off and done, there's a sense of accomplishment, and that can help students feel more comfortable as they move, rather than I don't know what's going on until the midterm. So really trying to break the course into small pieces is advantageous for that reason as well. Okay, so required versus optional. I'm going to throw up another poll and try to understand, is your FYE offering at your organization optional or for credit? And I just want to get a sense of what you are doing with that as an institution. Okay, so it looks like everyone who's answered has indicated that their FYE program is for credit and graded, which is excellent. So kudos to you guys for making that happen if you played a role in it, or you're lucky in that regard, because students are much more likely to be engaged when it is required and for credit and graded. If I'll just show those results. So that's that 100% that I mentioned. If it's not, and you have any ability to affect change on that fact, so to make it required and graded, please do so, because people are going to be much more engaged with your FYE program if it's required versus optional. But optional is at least the starting point, but strongly recommended. And there's tons of research out there that show you why that is more effective that way. I'm sure you're probably aware of it if you're part of the FYE program. But yeah, please try to make that happen if it's not part of it, you didn't answer the poll. So I just wanted to bring that up. So how can you optimize learner engagement further? So we mentioned already the icebreaker, and best practice around that, just like I said, is educator first. So be willing to start the icebreaker yourself. And like the question that I had at the beginning of this webinar, it's nice to have a question that doesn't necessarily ask very personal information. So you notice I asked a question about your institution and not about you. And that makes people feel more comfortable responding. Keep it short, but relatively memorable. I know someone mentioned their university is only 27 years old, a fairly young institution. So, that can be fairly memorable as something that stands out about it. But yeah, avoid the cliche. You'll see tons of icebreakers as a cliche, and also avoid icebreakers where it's frivolous information like, oh, what's your favorite color? Which doesn't really have any connection for people that well. So it's not going to help with memorability in any case. But the other thing is record it. Like I mentioned with my dentist, being able to mention that to me at a later date and getting engagement from me and relaxation from me, as it could be useful. So record it for your own purposes, and be able to maybe use that information later, so students know that you're remembering things about them. So that's a pretty simple way to do it. So surveys, I've done a few polls already in this webinar. Hopefully that's the one thing that people seem to be responding to as opposed to other things. So that's a real easy way to do it. A poll, all you do is click a button and you can get a little bit of information out of people. So that's a good way to do it. Of course, regular personal contact from faculty is really good. If you can have any kind of seminars or open office hours where you invite students to interact on a more casual basis, that's really good, even if it's just online in a discussion or just in an asynchronous discussion forum is another way to do it. But ways that there are direct responses can increase that engagement a lot. Another thing that's really important is promoting peer interaction. So again, a discussion forum is really good for that. Setting up chats where people can talk to each other is a great way for that interaction. But something that you may have not, and you've probably heard about all these before, but I'm guessing that most people haven't heard this term, okay to fail opportunities. Okay to fail opportunities, an example would be like a practice quiz. So I'm just going to give you guys a practice. It's not for grades, but it's going to look like a quiz that you're going to get later on. So for them, it's an okay to fail opportunity where they can do something, know that there's no consequences for not doing well, but it has value in the course in terms of practice. If the first opportunity for a student to take a quiz, it's a chance for them to fail, that's going to set up, sort of a high stakes thing without any practice. So creating those okay to fail opportunities means that they're going to engage because they know there's very low risk. And that's what engagement is getting involved when, you want to try things and test them out. Or discussions that maybe don't have any grades attached to them in preparation for a discussion that will have a grade attached to it. So you got to set up those okay to fail opportunities. Students are willing to engage. I mean, everyone has fear of failure, and setting up okay to fail opportunities helps you overcome that. Also, clear view of progress. They should know exactly where they are in the course. And this can be difficult. I know in many learning management systems, you set up all these little modules or pieces that they don't know what they've completed or handed in. But if there's any way you can make it obvious that, here's a full view of what the course looks like, here's where you are now, here's what you've completed, here's what's yet to come, and do that at multiple points in the course or even continuously through the course, that makes it much easier because they know what they've accomplished, they know what's to come, more likely engage instead of being, I'm not sure where I've been or what I've done so far. So those are all really important learner engagement techniques that there's tons of research out there, again, that shows that these do increase engagement. I know I don't have time in this webinar to cover that, but the research is there. So another way that I didn't mention there is just feedback. So every time the student provides some kind of output, whether it's a question, they might be just asking a question in a discussion forum. It could be an assignment that's handed in. It could be a test. The opportunity to provide feedback to the student is fairly critical. This one I know is difficult. The time needed for an instructor to provide constant feedback is limited, but work on ways to, even if it's just a, hey, great job, or hey, did you think of this? Really quick bits of feedback make a huge difference rather than just silence, or just an automated grade. If it's something that seems more personal and handwritten from the instructor. And here's a little trick that is probably figured out more recently is, and this is a bit of a cheat, but it still has impact. So I'm going to reveal that the cheat's okay, is you can use something like a ChatGPT or Gemini. This is a Google version of ChatGPT, in case you didn't know, an AI bot to pre-generate a bunch of responses for assignments and then use them accordingly. So it's having your little inventory of responses. So you're not having to think of them on the fly, but you can pick and choose them and copy paste them into feedback opportunities for students that are at least appropriate. Obviously, you don't want to blindly paste them in, but paste the ones in that are appropriate to each different output the student provides. And that can speed things up, so it's not so onerous for you to provide that feedback. But that feedback is critical for engagement. So, and try to vary it, the same thing all the time. That's why I talked about having that inventory from an AI chatbot to have, ready at the ready. If you can do self-recorded video feedback, and I've got an example here on the screen that uses a Canvas tool that's integrated. It comes with Canvas. You don't have to do anything special other than do a quick video. And most people have some kind of camera associated to their laptop or even their phone or even their desktop. And you could do a 5-second video message, hey, great job. And there's that personalization of a face saying something to the student saying, good job on this, but here's some advice for you in the future. And you can literally make it 5 or 10 seconds long, and that should suffice. I mentioned virtual office hours as well for feedback. So any questions about that? I think, do I have the poll here about... No, I don't have a poll here about that. I thought I was going to do it, but I didn't. About how many people have an LMS or use an LMS and what their level of familiarity is with your LMS system. So if anyone wants to throw that into the chat right now, just mention, first of all, do you know what LMS system your college uses? And number 2, your level of familiarity with that LMS system. Great. They've got Canvas, so they're probably seen some of the screenshots. I would be familiar. That goes a long ways towards that engagement. And Maggie, I'll ask, were you aware of this video tool that's integrated with Canvas that instructors can provide short little video messages to students? Nice. That's excellent. So Maggie mentioned that they have a great digital learning department, and that's a great resource for instructors and administrators to use to have that digital learning department get instructors familiar with the LMS system and take advantage of all the tools it has to offer, specifically around increasing engagement. Moodle will have similar tools. I know it's an open source tool, and there's lots of information out there on the web about it, but it can be a little bit difficult to navigate, I admit, because it can vary from institution to institution in terms of how it's implemented. But if you have a digital learning department or any kind of IT department that can help instructors with that, I highly, highly recommend you take advantage of those resources, because being familiar with the tool will, first of all, just make you more comfortable as an instructor or administrator, overseeing it. But number 2, you'll be able to integrate those learner engagement techniques that we've been talking about in this webinar so far. And it'll save you time in the long run. It's a little bit of investment up front to learn, but once you become familiar, it is a big time saver in the long run. So highly recommend that. And by the way, this little image here, it took me literally 30 seconds to do this. So I read the response from the student in this discussion assignment, and I recorded it, submitted it, made it available to the student within 30 seconds. So once you're familiar with the tools, it doesn't take hardly any time at all. And all from your desk. You don't even have to get up from your desk to go see the student and talk to them. But it's the next best thing, at least, because there's that video message. So strongly recommend that. As humans, we react to faces. Our brains are wired that way. That's part of my neurobiology education. As we have a whole section of our brain dedicated to recognizing faces and responding emotionally to faces. So it has a big impact. So peer interaction, I've discussed this briefly, and so this can save instructors a bit of time. Obviously, if peers are interacting with each other, they're going to be more engaged with a course because it's typically centered around course content, and there's that human interaction, like I mentioned, that increases engagement. So this link right here, and I think we make the PowerPoint available for download, Tamara, remind me again?
We certainly can. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. In the email they'll receive tomorrow.
Yeah. So this is from Western University, a university in Canada, but it applies to colleges and universities across North America about discussion tools in e-learning or online learning. And it's a great resource for the different tools that can be used for discussion. A lot of them are embedded already in LMS, but if you want something that goes to the next level, there's these ones too. I've used Piazza myself in postgraduate work. Twitter obviously called X now, but there are ratings of what are the advantages and disadvantages of each of these tools and how they can help in discussions in university courses. So recommend it if you can. I went to, there we go, wrong one. So different topics, open-ended type discussions can be better rather than short answer. Obviously, you're going to get longer answers from students, but avoid fact-based questions that end the discussion. So we want discussions that continue and make it worth points. So you don't necessarily have to grade it, but just participation in the discussion. If that is worth a grade, obviously students are going to be much more motivated to take part in a discussion. Completely optional ones, you probably notice most students will just not take part. So making it worth points to the final grade is going to make people actually take part in it and contribute. Don't just let it run all on its own. Throw something in there once in a while to let the students know that there are that you are involved in it. Your engagement increases their engagement, in other words. So more peer interaction discussion tools. This is an example Canvas uses. I know Maggie mentioned she's familiar, so she's probably familiar with this too, but I'm sure Moodle would have something similar to this where you can add an assignment, a module within the course, just that's discussion. So here's an example of your best trick. So allowing people to kind of show off their strengths. That's a way to increase engagement. So you're letting them discuss what they're good at. Lots of people like to talk about what they're good at. And it also can help with other students because once the student has put their information there, other students can learn from that. So this is a simple thing that's helped you in school. This is a great FYE type exercise. You may have seen something like this before about what a student's tip or trick is for being successful in school. And it's not just, the other part of this question is that it's prompted them with some more information rather than just saying, what's your best tip or trick, and then ending it there. So you're providing some examples. Try to pick something that's not obvious and you think others may not know about. And before you post, look what others have posted to avoid repetition. So you're having those qualifications when you prompt that discussion question rather than just a simple, what's your best trick for learning, and end it there. The question should be well qualified when you're starting the discussion. Anyone want to suggest, and I know I'm playing with fire here a little bit given previous silence, but anyone want to suggest another discussion question that then their experience has prompted good responses from students and prompted, maybe more peer-to-peer interaction? Any kind of discussion, whether they did it live, just off the cuff, or it was pre-planned and you had it as part of your course. Just throw that into the chat, or again, take yourself off of mute and offer it verbally.
I can actually add an example. My husband's taking some online courses right now, and it's the first time I've seen this in anything, but they actually wove the feedback from the discussion forum and said, cite it. within the paper that you're writing, they wanted specifically, they had to give 3 examples that were cited from the discussion from other students. So that was an interesting use of the forum and working it in. And I thought that was great. That was the first time I'd seen that before.
Yeah, it does double duty, getting people to back up their information with sources. I love that, being a science person, that you get to do that. So that's great. Thanks, Tamara.
You bet.
Okay, I'll keep moving forward here. Some more tools and strategies to keep peer interaction going is provide roles to students. So if you set up, let's say, a subgroup of students, let's put you guys into a group of 5 for this discussion, and you give them roles about, someone is, the reporter, someone is a recorder, someone looks up the source or is a fact checker. That'd be a great role to have in a discussion type group. And that gives people a clear sense of purpose rather than feeling maybe a little bit lost. If you provide them specific roles around a discussion, that can help facilitate that interaction. And then people know what their responsibility is and can also collaborate in that way, that you hit all the parts of the discussion, that, people aren't just doing one thing and missing out on other aspects of the discussion that could be had. So there's an example where person A, researches, creates part A, but then presents part B's content. So they're cross-learning. Is another example that you may have seen before. So. All right. More about the okay to fail opportunities. So I provided one example when I first brought it up, but here are some more examples. And I apologize if this is difficult to read. But number 1 is revision assignments. So after an assignment is handed in, they're allowed to see how it's been graded, any feedback, and then revise that assignment, and then also improve their grade on that assignment. That's critical, otherwise they're probably not going to do it. So allowing revision assignments is a great way to do that, because then it gives a chance to learn from mistakes. And if they know they can revise it, they probably feel a little more comfortable in the first place. So you got to limit that. Obviously, you can't just get them to hand in, a blank slate, and then their entire grade is dependent on the revision. So there has to be a balance between, expectations on the first iteration of it with the ability to revise it as well. Practice quizzes I mentioned before. Discussion boards prior to is another safe space for students to express opinions without fear of judgment. And progressive projects. This one can be a little bit difficult to organize, but once you get one going, you can repeat from semester to semester. It becomes really useful, where a project, rather than hand it all in at the end of the project after building it up, there's parts of it that they complete, and they can get feedback on those different parts that build into the final project, so that they feel more comfortable. Oh, I didn't do it right this first time. That's okay, because the final project is when I'm really going to, have to have it all done. But those first few iterations or pieces that they hand into the project, it's more of an okay to fail, because it's not the end of the line yet. And then peer review workshops, where before they hand in, they're required to hand in an assignment to a peer or review it before they hand it in for a final grade. And of course, that incorporates cross-learning as well. So that requires some setting up as well. Probably want to do that later in the course when the students are more familiar with the style of feedback that they should offer to their fellow students. Anyone else have any ideas for or what they think might work as an okay to fail opportunity for students? Well, if you think of one, just bring it up later. We're going to have to move along for time's sake here, but here's an example of one where it's sort of a matching activity. This is built into an online curriculum where they basically drag and drop, and it's not for grade, but most people are willing to drag and drop because there's very little writing that's involved. But this is an online tool. You can create drag and drop type quizzes with a lot of different online tools and integrate them into your LMS. So that's a nice way to do it. And then they can see the feedback right away, which is another critical part of saying, oh, this is right or wrong as soon as they drag and drop that. And so that's just one example of it. Clear view of progress. This is one of the last points for optimizing learner engagement. So learning management systems will often have a dashboard of the progress in a course. Pump up that dashboard in terms of its prominence within the course, because you have that ability in most LMS systems to get the dashboard to display to students, either at the top of the course or throughout. So, and maybe make sure they're checking it often. Gamification of certain elements, so being able to earn badges as they go through, or simple see their grades or what they've completed along the way. And progress reports as push notifications. Students aren't logging into, I'm sure you're not surprised at all that students aren't constantly logging into the LMS system and checking how they're doing on a course. But they're often checking their phone. So if something's set as a push notification, that reminder of an assignment, or when a grade comes out, or any kind of feedback that they get from the course or output, if it's sent as a push notification going to their email or even texting them in some cases, try to use that, because that's going to grab their attention a lot easier than just passively waiting for them to log in and check. So evidence of learning. This is another way to motivate students to get engagement. This is an example of a tool that we offer separately, aside from this webinar, but it exists in many iterations and many other products, where they can see where they are at the beginning of a particular course or section of a course. This one is a series of learning outcomes that are defined for a section of a course, and they are polled in the beginning of that section to say, how comfortable or how familiar are you with this particular learning outcome? And the green arrows indicate, or green check marks indicate where they are at the beginning, and the blue ones indicate where they are at the end. And if a student can see this to say, oh, wow, actually, I did make some progress with this. This might happen over the course of 2 weeks. They're pulled, at the beginning of that 2 weeks, a section is completed, then they're pulled at the end of it, and they can see, oh, actually, I learned something here. And it may not be as salient to them as they're doing it, but when they can see it visually like this, it becomes much more apparent, and they're going to be more engaged in future portions of the course, because they know it has had an impact. So that's another way to increase engagement. So seeing progress before and after is a way to summarize that, or see evidence of learning. Of course, this is great for reporting purposes for the college itself. So what other tools can help? Picking one place to aggregate everything, 90% of the time this is going to be in the LMS. You're going to want to do that, because that's where you get a clear view of progress. And if you have resources in multiple places, at least have a link to that other place all aggregated in one place, so they can see everything in one place, even if they're going off, or you maybe just copy pasted it into the LMS so that it's duplicated, even though it comes from another source. There's a way to integrate tools in something called eduappcenter.com. Again, once you download this PowerPoint, or this is made available to you, check out that link. It's very slick. I can open it now and just kind of give you a preview of what it looks like. So here are different apps. It tells what all they're about, and you can integrate them into your LMS system. Typically, these would be what's called LTI compliant, meaning they can integrate with any LTI rated system, which most LMS systems are, and you can integrate those apps rather than have people go off in different places. And like I said before, use and learn about your LMS. I did ask about LMS already, so this is where I would have had the poll, but we'll go forward anyway, because we're getting a little short on time. I mentioned integration. I know this looks very familiar as a screenshot before, but just to show you, this is integration of different elements in here. So each of these things will link off to different elements, and they're integrated via the LMS. So what kind of content should you look for to maximize or optimize engagement, I should say? You know, something that's varied. So text, images, video, auto-scored quizzes, reflection, highlighting, note-taking. the more different types of activities you can have, less bored people are, and obviously more engaged. So try to have some variety instead of the same thing over and over again. That I think is fairly straightforward. I'll mention the tool again. It's called College Scope, as a tool that Human eSources offers. It is a full FYE course that integrates with LMS systems, and it has built-in interactive content in it. Here are some examples of it. It has TED videos. It has reflection questions that follow the videos. It has these okay to fail type questions that aren't for grades, but they get immediate feedback, as well as links to sort of a remediation of like, oh, if I didn't get this right, where can I learn more about this so that on the actual quiz, I can get this question right. And that's this sort of reading skills link you see down at the bottom. So it is one example of type of content that you can integrate with an LMS system for your FYE course. That is a series of modules around everything from, learning about the college that you're in and what resources are available in the college, learn about, what kind of careers, goals they may look forward to based on the courses that they're taking or the program that they're in, and why that matters in terms of career goals matching up with the course content that they get in their various courses. So of course that increases engagement and quizzing engine that basically auto scores things in a lot of cases to make grading really easy, and it integrates with the LMS systems grade system as well. So it's a fairly convenient one. This is that okay to fail activity that I mentioned before that's integrated with it. They have highlighting and note taking, so like a textbook, but it's all online, obviously, but they can take notes on it, so there's that bit of engagement. There are also assessments that are integrated with it, not just your standard objective assessments that measure their course learning, but in this case, it's a personality assessment. So students then have more fun with those things, but it's not just about fun. In this case, the personality assessment will actually give them advice on being more successful in school, as well as what kind of career goals may work well for them based on their personality. And that has been shown to increase engagement. That's a big part of what we do as an organization at Human eSources. Is we have these series of assessments that are designed to increase engagement for students, partially through things being personalized for them, because once it's measured their personality type, it can cater the content that it delivers based on a personality type, but it also shows career goals that would align with their personality type, and by doing so, make them more comfortable with choosing a major, with choosing courses, and with planning their future career. So that's all integrated with this College Scope curriculum or courseware. This is just an integration with the grading system, as I mentioned. All the journals would have a grade that would be manually scored in addition to the auto-scored quizzes, and that's all integrated with the Learning Management's grade system. Like I said here, the grade book that Canvas uses, but it also integrates with Moodle, D2L, Brightspace, and Blackboard. This is what it looks like when it's integrated in LMS, into Canvas particularly. And we do have a case study. So there's evidence that this does increase engagement. So all the theory behind engagement that I did earlier in the webinar has been built into or woven into that College Scope product that I mentioned. And we have had engagement outcomes that have been measured. There's a case study available here, and we did it in cooperation with South Louisiana Community College. And we have evidence of that increased engagement, as well as increase in retention, increase in grades for students. So there is evidence basically that it does work. This was some of the interview that came out of it. So we did basically follow up with the faculty there, and they agreed that this was what their goals were and that the goals were met around this. with that College Scope product. So again, there was good buy-in from faculty as a result of the impact that it had. More numerical type results from here, where this was back in 2016, 17. So we were early to market with this thing, but we've had a good success record ever since. They experienced a 17-point increase in pre and post chapter confidence scores, which is evidence of engagement, and a high correlation between those quiz scores and confidence scores, which shows that that confidence translated into better grades as a result. And there are more case studies that we've done with colleges of Southern Idaho as well. Their FYE culture is called GNED 101. If you are interested in what College Scope might be able to offer your university, your college, feel free to contact Carla. She's the person who handles those sort of inquiries, and there's her contact information for you. And there's lots of different solutions we offer with it, whether it's partial, full, or even customizing it to some degree to your institution's needs. We can do that.
Yeah, I'll just ask if there's any questions. I know we're on the hour, so I want to make sure that we're ending on time. Thank you, everybody, so much for your time today. And if you do have any questions, I'll include Nick and Carla's information as well in the email that you receive tomorrow. And thank you very much for attending today's session. I hope you'll take the time to fill out the survey that's available after the webinar as well. And so again, another form of engagement and what can we do to improve. So thank you very much. And thanks, Nick, for sharing your expertise today.
Yeah.
And we hope you have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.